The sound.
The sound of where we live. The Cool Seat with Jim Hawkins. BBC Radio Shropshire.
In the Cool Seat today, children's author Roy Bradshaw from the Ironbridge area of Telford. Roy, thank you very much for being with us in the Cool Seat today.
Good afternoon, Jim.
Your children's author, though, wasn't your first career, was it? You started off as an engineer, is that right?
I did. I started off quite a while back now as a metallurgist for 12 years after I left school. Then I went into engineering in the plastics industry for automotive suppliers, and I did plenty of years in the automotive engineering sector.
And at some point you also became a teacher. At one point you were kind of doing both of them, is that right?
Well, I was made redundant from a long-term engineering role.
Right.
I was sort of at the wrong age to go back into that because there was a flood of me around, if you understand that.
Yes, exactly.
And so I went back to university and finished off a degree that I started many years before, and started afresh from there. Whilst I was at Wolverhampton University, the careers people came around, and one of them was teaching, so I took a fancy to that. And so I went into that from then. That was about 2005 when that happened.
And you've taught in all sorts of different schools, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, I taught as a secondary teacher. That's what I trained as in design and technology, because that was my favourite subject at school, woodwork and metalwork. So I thought I got the best chance of succeeding in that area. So that's where I qualified. But unfortunately, there was no position at the school that I was at, which was Rocketline Wood Arts College. So I went on to supply, and I found out that I was getting more and more primary school supply than I was secondary school supply. So, it sort of broadened my experiences, and in all honesty, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I did that, and eventually got a primary school role, year 3 teacher.
And at what point did you start thinking about writing stories for children?
Well, I've always sort of had a propensity to write all my life, really. Going all the way back to when I was sort of a young teenager in school. I'd write my own lyrics to popular songs that were about in the charts. One in particular I can recall was Ernie, the fastest milk cart in the West. You probably have a certain age to remember that.
Yeah.
So, I put my own sort of boyish, rude, shall we say, words to it. And for fun, a bit of fun for my mates. And, a teacher got it, and I got detention for it. Anyway, I'm sure he had a good laugh.
So you'd always written, but had you always wanted to be an author?
Of late, yes. For the last, say, 5 or 6 years, I wrote some adult novels. I wrote 3. I generally tend to write in a series. I'll write a book, and then I think about something that could have happened before or something that could have happened after. And I end up writing 2 or 3, and that's been the case with the adult novels that I did. I wrote one called Pute in the 31st Century, which is about artificial intelligence, and lots of twists and turns in that story. It's a good story, but and that sort of led me to, because that was set in the 31st century, I needed to write something to say what happened to get to that level, to get to that setting, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah. So how we got to the 31st century? Yes.
In the 31st century, my story, if you can imagine, the world has a new crust on it that's man-made, going around because we have destroyed the old Earth as it was, and the new setting is where people live now on the new crust, some 50 meters or so around the globe that's man-made,
Right.
Yeah. It's a fancy thing. But then the story came to me that what happened to start the construction of this new false world that's going around our Earth now in the 31st century.
Yeah.
So.
Again, without giving away too much, what did happen to require the creation of a new crust for the Earth?
What did happen? It was a catastrophic event that with a shift in the Earth's axis. That created. This is my story, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Along with all the environmental problems that we're going through now, and that sort of left our Earth as we know it now uninhabitable. And we had to move out, and a small group of specially chosen people got to go onto this journey into the new world that was being constructed at the time before the old Earth got sort of destroyed.
Is the engineer in you fascinated by these kind of issues, these kind of problems?
Yeah. But the initial inspiration for that one came from a lecturer many years ago, saying that one day we'll all have a little phone in our pocket, and I thought at the time, how are you going to get a great big red box like that in your pocket? Anyway, that's come to fruition. And he also said, we'll probably be talking to it rather than using our fingers to dial numbers on it. And that's come to fruition. So my idea of Pewt is that takes it a level further than that. So it's a creature that comes about from a human thought.
Right.
So the communication is through thinking with a machine rather than talking to a machine. Yeah, you understand that?
Yes. Yeah. I see. There was that story that story last week about artificial intelligence, about an engineer at Google who said that his artificial intelligence had kind of become sentient and was expressing what amounts to feelings. I don't know what to make of that, but I mean, is that something you can see actually happening?
Well, it is happening, isn't it? Because we've got artificial intelligence now writing novels, and you've got to have feeling in novels.
Yeah, I suppose so. But your other books are very different, and we're going to talk more about those on BBC Radio Shropshire after George Ezra. Children's author Roy Bradshaw. We've talked about your science fiction, if you like, but how did you come to write children's books? I suppose, having been a primary school teacher, then you knew what they were looking for.
Yeah, to a degree. I used to do quite a lot of story Fridays, as we used to call them, once a month, twice a month, whatever, where the kids would plan out a story. They would practice some openings to stories, practice build-ups on another day, climaxes on another day, problems, and the resolution to the story and the endings to stories. So we used to do quite a lot of that when I was primary school teaching. We still do. And so that's sort of inspired me to start. Yeah.
So that's and in particular, you with a friend of yours and your dogs all come together. That were you, Mick and his dogs and the biscuits.
Yeah. He's a friend of mine. He has a couple of dogs. Barley, unfortunately, has passed on since our initial conversations. But he used to go, still does, on great big long walks in beauty spots around our lovely county, all sorts of different areas, and he'd tell me tales and stories that the dogs have been up to. And I said to him one day, I'm going to write a book about your dogs, and I'm going to call it Barley's Biscuit, because he's absolutely nuts about his biscuits. If he come into the pub and he'd spot a jar of biscuits on the bar, he'd pester everybody. Everybody he thought might even think about giving him a biscuit until they did. So, and he was all up for that, Mick. So I did. And I've written 12 of them altogether.
And what age range are they aimed at? What kind of response do you get to them?
Well, I get some fabulous response. I take them, if I can, around the schools. I always speak to the head teacher because I work on supply now as a supply primary school teacher. And they generally okay with trying to inspire the children to read, motivate them to read a little bit more. So the responses are quite good. What was the initial question? I've forgotten it now.
Yes. And what age group are they actually aimed at?
So they're fully illustrated. So they're full of colour illustrated. So you can go down to the sort of the Terrible Twos as a bedtime story. You can show them the pictures, read a page a night or something, and show them the pictures. But for general reading themselves, I would say 4 up to maybe 7, or a bright 3-year-old reader that's advanced, up to say an 8-year-old that isn't so advanced. You understand that?
Yeah, exactly. Where can people get them from?
Okay. Well, I've got a list here, if I can read them out.
Yeah, sure.
So they're available in Broseley Newsagent, Ironbridge Chrysalis Newsagent, Moore's Fruit and Veg in Madeley, the Brewery Inn in Coalport, Tile Press Cafe in Moores, that's in Jackfield, Much Wenlock Museum, Shrewsbury Museum, and the latest one is the Manga Crate, which is a bookstore that's opened up in Wellington Market.
Right.
So they're also available, obviously, on Amazon. You can get them through my website, which is www.roybradshaw. That's roybradsaw.co.uk. And in all good bookstores, because they're on the Nielsen database. So they'll be on the websites of the likes of Waterstones and Peters and others, other good books.
12 so far. How many more still to come in the Barley's Biscuit series?
I've published 3. I want to publish the other 9, if I possibly can, before I die. and I've written some other stuff as well. So I've written a small series of 3 so far. I've started a 4th called Mr. B's Busy Bee. That's BEA, by the way, short for Beatrice, although she is a bee, and that's the line from the first story, that is. I'm giving a bit away. That's about a class teacher called Mr. B. It's based broadly on some experiences that I've had in Year 3 groups in the past. And my fictitious school is Alleywood Primary School. And the kids once a month, the best one, gets to take home Mr. B's Busy Bee, who's a fluffy toy. And they have to write down any experiences that they have, or where they take Busy Bee. And Busy Bee always takes them onto a magical adventure somewhere to fight good against evil. And good always wins, of course.
Of course. Roy Bradshaw, thank you very much for being in the cool seat at BBC Radio Shropshire today. As Roy said, you can find his books in all sorts of places and search online for his website as well. Thank you so much for your time, Roy. 24 minutes past 12.